You got to make sure you don't have a weak mind. It's easy to overlook, but it's one of the most dangerous traps in life. We can be so concerned with physical strength, with how we look on the outside, that we forget the inside is where the real battle happens. And if you're not careful, if you're not deliberate in training your mind, you'll develop habits that weaken you from within. You won't even realize it until you're facing a challenge and your mind gives up before your body ever does. The first habit that will ruin all chances at success is complaining. Now, complaining is one of those things that seems harmless. In fact, it's so common that we don't even notice when we're doing it. We complain about the weather, the government, our neighbors, our jobs. But here's the thing. Every time you complain, you focus on the problem, not the solution. And where your attention goes, your energy flows. So if you're always pointing out what's wrong, what's not working, you're draining your mental energy. You're programming yourself to see life in terms of obstacles instead of opportunities. It's like you're giving yourself permission to stay stuck. Complaining is a passive activity. It gives the illusion of action, but it doesn't change a thing. It weakens your resolve because it reinforces a mindset of helplessness. Strong people don't waste their time on complaints. They look at the same situation, the same problem, and they ask, what can I do about it? That's a shift in mentality that builds strength. Next, stop making excuses. Now, excuses, they feel comfortable, don't they? They let us off the hook. We say things like, I didn't have enough time, or I don't have the right resources, or it's not my fault. But I'm telling you something important. Excuses are dangerous because they give away your power. When you make an excuse, you're saying the control is out of your hands, that something external is responsible for your failure. You're placing the blame somewhere else. And here's what happens over time. You stop believing in your own ability to change your circumstances. You convince yourself that your situation is fixed, that you're a victim of life instead of the creator of it. But strong people, they take full responsibility. They know that life isn't always fair, but they also know that they're the ones steering the ship, no matter the storm. If you get in the habit of making excuses, you're weakening your mind. You're training your mind to find reasons why you can't, instead of finding ways that you can. Next, stop comparing yourself to others. You start measuring your worth against someone else's success. But I'm telling you, the moment you start comparing yourself to others, you lose sight of your own journey. You see, everyone is on their own path. What works for someone else might not work for you, and that's okay. But when you constantly compare, you're always chasing something that's outside of yourself. And that's exhausting. You'll never be satisfied because there will always be someone who's ahead of you, someone who's doing things differently or seemingly better. Mental strength comes from focusing on your own progress. The only person you should be competing with is the person you were yesterday. When you compare yourself to others, you're distracted from your own growth, and that weakens you. It erodes your self-confidence because you're playing by someone else's rules instead of your own. And I'm telling you, no one ever became strong by following someone else's path. Next, don't try to be perfect. Now, being perfect is one of those things that sounds good in theory. You want everything to be just right. You have high standards. But here's where it becomes a problem. Perfectionism is rooted in fear. The fear of making a mistake. The fear of being less than perfect. And when you're afraid, you hesitate. You wait, you plan and plan, but you never act. You never take that first step because you're waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect conditions, the perfect you. But I'm telling you, perfection doesn't exist. Life is messy. Success is messy. And if you wait for perfection, you'll never get started. You'll be stuck in a loop of inaction. Mental strength comes from embracing imperfection. It comes from knowing that you're going to make mistakes, that things aren't always going to go according to plan, and that's okay. You learn from it. You adjust. You grow. But if you demand perfection from yourself, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're putting an impossible standard in front of you. And when you inevitably fall short, you'll feel defeated. Strong people, they understand that progress is better than perfection. They know that it's better to take imperfect action than to take no action at all. Because action builds momentum, and momentum builds confidence. Perfectionism, on the other hand, keeps you stuck, and over time it makes you mentally fragile. Next, you got to stop living in the past. We've all done it. We replay old memories, old mistakes, old hurts, thinking that maybe if we go over them enough times, we can change what happened. But here's the truth. The past is gone. It's done. And the more time you spend living in the past, the less energy you have for the present. The past can be a heavy weight to carry, especially if it's filled with regret or pain. But strong people, they know that the past is a place of reference, not residence. You can visit it, you can learn from it, but you don't live there. When you dwell on the past, you're giving up control over your present. You're letting old wounds dictate your future. And that weakens you because you're constantly looking backward instead of forward. It's like trying to drive a car while only staring in the rearview mirror. You're going to crash. The past has lessons to teach, but it's the present where you apply those lessons. If you're stuck in what was, you'll never move toward what could be. Next, stop looking for validation from the people around you. We all want to be liked, appreciated, and validated by others. It's part of being human. But if you're constantly looking for approval from others, you're putting your sense of self-worth in their hands. And that's dangerous because people's opinions change. One day they like you, the next day they don't. If you tie your confidence to what others think of you, you'll always be at their mercy. True mental strength comes from within. It comes from knowing your own worth, regardless of whether others recognize it. When you're always seeking external validation, you're weakening your own sense of self. You're telling yourself that you're only as good as other people say you are. But strong people, they validate themselves. They set their own standards. They know that their value doesn't depend on external applause. They don't need someone else to tell them they're on the right path because they trust themselves. The more you rely on others for validation, the more you weaken your ability to stand strong in who you are. Next, don't give up too soon. Life is full of challenges, full of setbacks. That's a given. But here's where mental strength comes into play. Strong people don't quit when things get tough. They don't give up at the first sign of difficulty. Weakness, though, it makes you fold when things don't go as planned. It makes you think, maybe this wasn't meant to be. But the truth is, anything worth having is going to require perseverance. It's going to require pushing through the hard times. Weak people quit too early. They stop just when they're about to break through. Mental toughness is built by staying in the game, by weathering the storms, by refusing to give up when everything in you says it would be easier to walk away. Next, don't get too comfortable. We live in a world where convenience is king. We have technology that makes life easier, services that cater to our every need, and it's tempting to want to avoid discomfort at all costs. But here's the problem. Growth happens in discomfort. You don't build mental strength sitting in a place of ease. When you avoid discomfort, when you choose the path of least resistance, you're missing out on the very experiences that would toughen you up. You're shrinking your comfort zone instead of expanding it. And life doesn't reward the people who stay comfortable. It rewards those who are willing to endure discomfort in the pursuit of something greater. Think about it. Any worthwhile goal, any significant achievement, it requires stepping into the unknown, pushing through challenges, and facing fears. But if you get into the habit of avoiding discomfort, you'll never get there. You'll settle. You'll stay in your safe little bubble. And over time, that weakens you mentally. It makes you fragile. Because life isn't always going to be comfortable. And if you haven't trained yourself to handle discomfort, you'll crumble when real adversity strikes. Strong people don't avoid discomfort. They seek it out. They know that discomfort is a sign that they're growing, that they're pushing their limits. It's in those moments of discomfort that you discover what you're truly capable of. But if you make it a habit to avoid anything that makes you feel uneasy, you'll never tap into your full potential. Next, don't hold grudges. Now, this is a tough one because when someone wrongs us, it's natural to feel hurt, to feel angry. And sometimes we hold on to that anger, thinking that by doing so, we're punishing the other person. But here's the truth. Holding a grudge doesn't hurt the other person. It hurts you. It's like carrying a heavy weight on your back that grows heavier with time. And the longer you hold on to it, the more it drags you down. Mental strength isn't about ignoring what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about choosing to let go so that you can move forward. When you hold on to grudges, you're letting the past control you. You're allowing someone else's actions to dictate your emotions and your peace of mind. And that weakens you because it keeps you stuck in a negative state of mind. Strong people forgive, not because the other person necessarily deserves it, but because they deserve peace. They understand that forgiveness is a gift they give themselves. It's not about forgetting or condoning what happened. It's about freeing up mental and emotional energy that could be used for more productive things. But when you hold a grudge, when you let that anger fester, it saps your mental strength. It consumes you, and it leaves little room for anything else. So, if you want to be mentally strong, you've got to learn the art of letting go. Not for their sake, but for yours. Next, stop doubting yourself. We've all had moments of doubt. Those moments where you think, can I really do this? Am I good enough? What if I fail? But if you let doubt take over, if it becomes a habit, it will sabotage every effort you make. You see, doubt is like a virus that spreads. It starts with one little seed. Maybe someone said something negative about you, or maybe you didn't get the results you wanted. And from there, it grows. It makes you second guess yourself. It makes you hesitate. And in that hesitation, you lose momentum. You lose confidence. And before you know it, you're paralyzed. Stuck in a loop of questioning your abilities and your worth. Strong people aren't free from self-doubt. They have those moments too. But here's the difference. They don't let it stop them. They recognize the doubt for what it is. A fleeting thought, not a permanent truth. They push through it, knowing that action is the antidote to doubt. The more you take action, the more you prove to yourself that you're capable, and the less power doubt has over you. But if you get into the habit of feeding your self-doubt, of giving it too much attention, it will weaken you. It will stop you from trying new things, from taking risks, from stepping into the unknown. And if you never step into the unknown, you never grow. You've got to learn to quiet that voice in your head that says you can't, and replace it with one that says you can. Because the truth is, you're stronger than you think. But you'll never know that if you keep letting self-doubt call the shots. Next, don't focus too much on things you can't control. There's a lot in life that's outside of our control. The weather, the economy, other people's actions, and even some of the circumstances we find ourselves in. But here's the thing. If you spend your mental energy worrying about things you can't control, you're wasting that energy. You're weakening yourself because you're putting your focus on things that are outside of your influence. And the more you do that, the more you feel powerless. Like life is something that happens to you instead of something you create. Strong people focus on what they can control. Their thoughts, their actions, their responses to whatever life throws at them. They don't waste time or energy trying to change things that are beyond their reach. They accept what they can't control and then direct their energy toward what they can. That's where mental strength is built. But when you get into the habit of obsessing over things that are outside of your control, you weaken your resolve. You're trying to fight battles that aren't yours to fight. And in doing so, you're draining yourself mentally. It's like trying to push a boulder uphill. It's exhausting, and it doesn't get you anywhere. So if you want to strengthen your mind, if you want to become the kind of person who can face anything with confidence and resilience, you've got to let go of what you can't control. Focus on what's within your power. Focus on your mindset, your actions, your habits. That's where your strength lies. That's where you have control. And that's how you build a mind that's tough, resilient, and unshakable. Every one of these habits I've talked about today, whether it's complaining, making excuses, seeking validation, or focusing on things outside your control, each one erodes your mental strength little by little. But the good news is, just as you can weaken your mind, you can also strengthen it. It's all about awareness and action. The more you become aware of these habits, the more you can catch yourself in the act and choose a different path. And the more you practice mental toughness, the stronger you become. Life will always throw challenges your way. That's a given. But whether those challenges break you or build you up depends on the habits you cultivate. There's a moment in every life where the question shifts. When the chase for achievement starts to feel empty, when the schedule is full, but the soul feels tired. When you've checked the boxes, climbed the ladder, gathered the titles, and still find yourself wondering, is this it? That's when the deeper question shows up. Not what can I do, but why does it matter? Not how do I succeed, but what was I made for? That question, the question of purpose, changes everything. Because purpose isn't something you stumble into. It's something you choose. It's not a finish line. It's a framework. It's how you build, how you lead, how you recover, how you rise. Purpose gives your life structure when everything around you feels uncertain. It brings meaning to repetition. It gives strength to your discipline. It breathes clarity into the places where fear used to live. Without purpose, even progress feels hollow. Without purpose, even victory feels fleeting. Because movement without meaning just creates motion sickness. You keep going, but you never arrive. You stay busy, but you don't feel built. Purpose anchors you. It brings direction to your decisions, weight to your words, intention to your time. Most people are not lacking talent. They're not lacking opportunity. They're lacking clarity. They don't know what their life is about. So they fill their days with distraction, with ambition, with noise. But underneath it all, they're aching for something deeper, something real, something they don't have to perform for, something they don't have to pretend to deserve. They want purpose, and they're right to want it. Because without it, the wins won't satisfy. The grind won't make sense. The setbacks will break them, and the end will feel empty. Purpose doesn't start with answers. It starts with questions. Who am I when no one's watching? What do I value more than comfort? What pain have I survived that could become someone else's healing? What matters so deeply to me that I would do it, even if no one noticed? When you ask those questions, you begin to uncover the blueprint that's already written in your soul. You start to see that purpose isn't out there. It's in here. And it's not waiting for you to be perfect. It's waiting for you to be honest. You don't need to have it all figured out to live with purpose. You just need to stop running from it. You need to stop numbing yourself with distraction. Stop outsourcing your clarity to other people's opinions. Stop believing that your worth is tied to your work. You need to pause long enough to hear the truth that's been buried under busyness. Because it's there, and it's strong, and it's ready to guide you into a life that feels like it was made for you, because it was. Purpose doesn't mean the path will be easy, but it means the pain won't be wasted. It means the effort will matter. It means your discipline will have a destination. It means your growth will mean something. And when you live like that, when every day becomes a step into a deeper calling, you stop asking, what's the point? And start saying, this is why I'm here. The first principle is to define your values with ruthless clarity. Because if you don't know what you stand for, you'll settle for anything that sounds good in the moment. You'll chase other people's dreams. You'll follow someone else's plan. You'll say yes to things that drain you and wonder why you feel empty. Purpose begins with knowing what matters most to you. Not in theory, but in action. Not what you say you value, but what your life shows. Values are not decorations. They are anchors. They guide your behavior when the pressure is high. They hold your boundaries when it would be easier to compromise. They speak when fear gets loud. They lead you when everything else feels unclear. And if you haven't defined them, you will be vulnerable to environments that shape you instead of strengthen you. You start by asking yourself the hard questions. What matters more to me than comfort? What do I want my name to stand for? What behaviors am I unwilling to tolerate in myself, even when no one else is watching? These are not surface level questions. They require honesty and they require courage, because clarity always costs comfort. It's easy to say you value growth, but if you're avoiding challenge, do you really? It's easy to say you value integrity, but if you're quiet when something wrong happens in front of you, is that integrity or convenience? It's easy to say you value relationships, but if your schedule doesn't reflect time for people you love, what are you really prioritizing? Your values show up in how you live, in how you spend your time, in what you say no to, in what you defend, in what you build, and what you're willing to walk away from. Defining them isn't about making a list. It's about making a decision. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what I protect. When your values are unclear, you will always feel pulled. You will feel scattered. You will say yes too quickly. You will chase things that don't belong to you. You will build a life that looks good on the outside, but doesn't feel right on the inside. But when your values are clear, you start moving with peace, even if it's hard, even if you disappoint others, because at least you know the life you're building belongs to you. You don't have to explain your values to everyone, but you do have to live them. Otherwise, they're just decorations. They're just ideas you wish were true. Purpose comes from living what you believe, from building your life in alignment with your deepest convictions, not just your temporary feelings. And that alignment, that's where strength comes from. That's where resilience is born. Because when life pushes against you, and it will, you don't get blown over. You don't scramble to figure out who you are. You already know, and that knowing becomes your edge. Living with purpose doesn't mean every day is exciting. It means every day is aligned. You may not always be in the mood, but when you know what matters most, you stop letting mood make the decision. You show up based on your values, not based on your comfort. You build your schedule around them. You build your business around them. You build your relationships around them. And if something doesn't fit, you don't keep forcing it. You have the courage to let it go. Not because it's bad, but because it's misaligned. That's maturity. That's leadership. That's purpose. It's the decision to live guided by what you believe, not just what feels good in the moment. So define your values, revisit them often, hold them with strength, because they will become the compass that leads you out of confusion and into clarity, out of performance and into presence, out of distraction and into purpose. The second principle is to make peace with your past so it doesn't poison your purpose. Everyone carries something: regret, shame, guilt, a wound they didn't deserve, a decision they wish they could take back, a season they still don't know how to explain. And if you don't learn how to make peace with those chapters, you will keep dragging them into every room you enter. You'll keep reacting to things that are no longer happening. You'll keep sabotaging what you're trying to build, because a part of you still believes you don't deserve to have it. Purpose cannot thrive in the presence of unresolved pain. It will always feel like a contradiction. You'll say you want to lead, but you'll be afraid to be seen. You'll say you want to grow, but you'll avoid the work that reminds you of what you lost. You'll say you're ready to rise, but you'll keep looking over your shoulder wondering if your past disqualifies you. But you are not disqualified. You are not broken. You are not beyond repair. You are someone who lived through something, and now you get to decide what that something means. Because meaning is not what happened. It's what you make of what happened. And if you don't give your pain a purpose, it will try to define one for you. One rooted in limitation, in self-doubt, in fear. The goal is not to erase your past. It's to integrate it. It's to mine the lessons without carrying the shame. It's to honor the experience without letting it own you. This takes work, emotional work, spiritual work. But it's the kind of work that liberates your future. Sometimes we think we've moved on, but we've just moved forward without healing. We've buried the memories, but they still show up. In the way we flinch at certain feedback, in the way we overreact to small problems, in the way we shrink when it's time to be seen. That's the past, still asking for resolution. You don't have to relive every moment to find healing, but you do have to stop pretending those moments didn't shape you. You have to stop ignoring the pain and start asking what it's trying to show you. What did I lose in that season that I need to grieve? What did I learn in that season that I need to remember? What pattern am I still living out because I never let that part of me heal? Your past will become your greatest mentor or your most consistent saboteur. It all depends on whether you've dealt with it. When you make peace with it, you stop fighting yourself. You stop splitting your energy between building something new and trying to outrun something old. You become whole, integrated, steady. People who are whole carry themselves differently. They don't need applause to feel secure. They don't get rattled when life brings tension. They don't project their wounds onto the people they love. They've done the work. They know their story. And they've made peace with all of it. And once you do that, purpose feels lighter. You stop living in contradiction. You stop editing yourself to avoid exposure. You stop playing small out of fear someone might find out what you've been through. You lead with authenticity, with courage, with clarity, because you know who you are, and you're not afraid of it anymore. This is not a quick fix. It's a journey, but it's one worth taking. Because your future is too important to let it be dictated by unhealed chapters. Make peace. Not just so you can feel better, but so you can live better, so you can build something that feels right, something that doesn't collapse under the weight of what you never resolved. The third principle is to embrace the tension between who you are and who you're becoming. Because growth doesn't happen in comfort. It doesn't happen in certainty. It happens in that stretch, that space where the old version of you no longer fits, but the new one hasn't fully arrived. That's where purpose is forged. Not in the place where everything is familiar, but in the place where everything is asking for more from you. It's tempting to run back to comfort when growth begins to cost something, when your new habits feel awkward, when your boundaries start changing the dynamics in your relationships, when your voice starts to shake because you are speaking the truth instead of keeping the peace. That's the tension. And that tension is not a problem. It's proof. Proof that something is shifting, that something real is happening, that you're becoming someone you haven't been before. People who live with purpose understand this tension isn't meant to be avoided. It's meant to be honored. They stop asking for the stretch to disappear. They start asking for the strength to walk through it. They stop trying to fast forward the process. They slow down. They breathe through it. They recognize that discomfort isn't always danger. It's often direction. The reason so many people stay stuck is because they expect clarity before they commit. They want a guarantee. They want to know how it will work out before they take the first step. But that's not how purpose works. You move first. You decide first. You trust the pull. You obey the nudge. And as you walk, the path reveals itself. This is the work that most people never talk about. The internal shift, the emotional friction, the mental gymnastics of stepping into a bigger identity while your fear still tries to keep you small. You feel the call forward, but you also feel the pull back. That's the in-between. And if you can learn to stand in it, breathe in it, move through it, you unlock something powerful. Because every version of you that you've outgrown is going to resist your evolution. Not because it's evil, but because it's familiar. And your nervous system craves what it knows, even if what it knows is the very thing that's been holding you back. So don't be surprised when your old habits show up, when your old fears try to speak, when your old story tries to convince you that you're not ready. That's normal. That's human. But you don't have to listen. You hold your ground. You remind yourself who you are, who you're becoming, what matters now. You stop measuring your life by who you used to be. You stop using past limitations as the template for your future. You allow yourself to be new, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. This is where your character is refined, where your voice is shaped, where your conviction is tested. You won't always feel certain. You won't always feel ready, but you move anyway. You act anyway. You show up anyway, because your purpose demands your stretch. And when you live like that, when you embrace the discomfort of growth, you become unstoppable. Not because you're fearless, but because you've trained yourself to move with fear. You've trained yourself to rise with doubt. You've trained yourself to believe in the version of you that you're still becoming. The fourth principle is to choose contribution over comparison. Nothing kills purpose faster than looking sideways. You start with clarity, you start with momentum, you start with vision. But the second you shift your gaze to what everyone else is doing, what they're building, how fast they're going, how much applause they're getting, you lose your rhythm. You lose your joy. You lose your sense of what actually matters to you. Comparison is a thief. It robs you of peace. It robs you of progress. Because now you're no longer building your life. You're trying to match someone else's blueprint. But their life wasn't made for you. Their pace wasn't set for you. Their priorities aren't yours. And if you measure your purpose by their highlight reel, you'll always feel behind, even when you're exactly where you're meant to be. You don't have to run someone else's race to be worthy. You don't have to achieve what they've achieved to feel proud. You don't need their approval to validate your direction. Because purpose isn't about impressing people. It's about impacting people. And impact doesn't come from comparison. It comes from contribution. What are you contributing? That's the question that brings you back to center. What do you have to give? What strength do you carry? What insight do you offer? What presence do you bring into the room? You might not be where they are, but you have something they don't. Your perspective, your pain, your voice, your experience, your heart. Your purpose is built in that place. Contribution shifts the focus from what you lack to what you carry, from scarcity to overflow, from fear to generosity. Because when you're focused on giving, you stop worrying about proving. You don't need to be the best. You need to be useful. You don't need to be flawless. You need to be authentic. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to show up with what you've got. Most people spend their energy trying to prove something that doesn't even need to be proven. But contribution flips the game. You're no longer trying to win in someone else's arena. You're building your own. You're playing your game. You're creating from alignment, not from envy. And when you do that, something beautiful happens. You stop feeling behind. You stop second-guessing your journey. You stop resenting someone else's success. Because you're no longer trying to match them. You're contributing to something different, something that fits you, something that honors your story, something that moves people in a way only you can. Comparison will always show up, but it doesn't have to stay. You don't have to invite it in. You don't have to believe its voice. You just have to refocus. You just have to return to your lane. You just have to keep asking, how can I contribute today? What can I build, create, share, or support that feels aligned with who I am becoming? Because the people who live with purpose don't have the most glamorous lives. They're not always the loudest or the flashiest, but they're consistent. They're clear. They show up. They contribute. And that contribution creates a ripple effect that comparison never could. The fifth principle is to lead yourself with integrity before you try to lead anyone else. Purpose is not about position. It's not about being in charge. It's not about being loud, impressive, or followed by a crowd. It's about alignment, doing what you say you'll do, especially when no one's watching. It's about living in such a way that your life speaks louder than your words. That's integrity. And integrity is what gives your purpose weight. Anyone can talk about what matters to them. Anyone can say what they believe. But the power of a purposeful life comes from congruence, from the quiet strength of someone who doesn't need applause to stay committed, from the daily decision to honor your own standards, regardless of whether or not anyone else is watching. Self-leadership is the foundation of every purposeful life. Because if you can't trust yourself, why should anyone else? If your habits betray your words, if your decisions contradict your values, if your lifestyle doesn't reflect what you preach, then your purpose becomes performance, and performance will eventually drain you. You lead yourself by choosing alignment over image. You say no to what looks good so you can say yes to what feels right. You stop chasing attention and start practicing discipline. You stay rooted even when no one's affirming you. Because purpose doesn't need to be seen to stay real. You don't need a title to lead. You don't need permission. You don't need a platform. You just need consistency, clarity, courage, the kind of internal rhythm that allows you to walk into a room without having to announce who you are, because your presence says it for you. Most people wait for the big opportunity before they step up. They wait to be recognized. They wait to be chosen. But purpose doesn't wait. Purpose leads now. Purpose makes the hard choice now. Purpose becomes the example now. And that's what separates people who drift from people who rise. If you want to live with purpose, you must become the kind of person who doesn't need supervision to stay accountable, who doesn't need pressure to stay focused, who doesn't need applause to stay committed. You become the person who builds a life that can be trusted, even in the dark. And yes, it will be hard. It will cost you. Because integrity means making the right choice when the wrong one would be easier. It means keeping your word when you're tired, showing up when you don't feel like it, choosing discipline over distraction, choosing alignment over validation. But this is how purpose becomes permanent. Not because you shout it from the rooftops, but because you build it into your habits, into your schedule, into the way you treat people, into the way you honor your own voice. When you lead yourself well, everything changes. Your confidence deepens. Your relationships strengthen. Your peace expands. Because now you're not carrying the weight of pretending. You're living real. And real is powerful. The sixth principle is to live with intention, not just ambition. Because ambition can get you moving, but only intention will keep you aligned. Ambition will tell you to go faster. Intention asks, are you going in the right direction? Ambition wants more. Intention wants meaning. Ambition pushes. Intention grounds. And the difference between a life that looks successful and a life that feels purposeful is often found in the difference between those two. There's nothing wrong with ambition. It's a beautiful thing when it's rooted in something real. But when ambition is detached from intention, it becomes restless. It becomes reckless. It starts chasing applause instead of alignment, status instead of service, results instead of impact. And that's when burnout happens. That's when achievement feels empty. That's when you get to the top of the mountain and realize it was the wrong one. Intention brings you back to why you started in the first place. It helps you make decisions with clarity instead of urgency. It helps you stay rooted when everyone else is sprinting in different directions. It keeps you connected to your core, so you don't lose yourself trying to win something that doesn't even matter to you. Living with intention means you stop chasing momentum for its own sake. You ask better questions. Will this choice bring me closer to who I'm becoming? Does this relationship support the kind of life I'm building? Is this opportunity in alignment with my values? Or is it just another shiny distraction? Most people don't pause long enough to ask those questions. They're too busy, too focused on staying relevant, too afraid that slowing down will make them fall behind. But purpose doesn't come from speed. It comes from clarity. And clarity can't be rushed. You don't need to do more. You need to do what matters. You don't need to have a fuller calendar. You need a deeper sense of direction. You need to know what you're saying yes to and why. Otherwise, you'll say yes to everything and end up living a life that was never really yours. Intention shows up in how you start your day, in how you enter a conversation, in how you listen, in how you lead, in how you rest, in how you give. You're not just going through the motions. You're choosing to be present. You're choosing to act from alignment, not from pressure. It means slowing down enough to be honest, to notice when you've drifted, to acknowledge when you've been reactive instead of purposeful, to course correct before the damage becomes a lifestyle. Because intention isn't perfection, it's awareness. And awareness leads to responsibility. Purposeful people don't always do more, but they do live deeper. They say less, but it carries more weight. They move slower, but they build something that lasts. They're not chasing everything. They're building something specific, something intentional, something that means something. And when you start living like that, you stop trying to prove anything. You stop competing. You stop performing. You just live with depth, with focus, with direction. And that direction will take you farther than speed ever could. The seventh principle is to honor your seasons. Because purpose isn't just about direction, it's about rhythm. It's about knowing that not every season is for acceleration. Not every chapter is about growth in the visible sense. Some seasons are for planting, some are for pruning, some are for healing, and some are for harvest. A life of purpose isn't just built by knowing where you're going, it's built by knowing when to go and when to rest. We live in a world that glorifies hustle, that says if you're not building something every second, you're falling behind. But growth doesn't happen in constant motion. It happens in alignment. It happens in obedience to the season. You can't force a harvest in the winter, You can't rush a seed to sprout. You have to trust the timing, and you have to live with enough wisdom to ask, what is this season for? When you honor your season, you stop comparing your timeline to someone else's. You stop judging your progress based on how fast they're moving. You stop being ashamed that this chapter feels slow, because slow doesn't mean stuck. It might mean you're being rooted, refined, realigned. And the people who live with the most powerful sense of purpose are not the ones who move the fastest. They're the ones who are the most obedient to the timing that is meant for them. Some seasons will stretch you. You'll be growing in the dark with no applause, no obvious result. Just quiet consistency, just repetition, just obedience to what you know is right. Don't rush that season. That's where your strength is built. That's where your character is refined. That's where you build the kind of trust in yourself that doesn't fade when pressure comes. Other seasons will challenge you to move, to act, to lead, to stop hiding and start building. You'll feel the urgency, the clarity, the fire. And in that season, don't hold back. Don't waste energy second guessing. Don't ask for permission to run. Run. Build and go. And then there will be seasons that ask you to grieve, to rest, to pause, to feel. Not because you're failing, but because your soul needs space to breathe. You're not weak because you need rest. You're wise when you recognize it. You're mature when you protect it. You're strong when you give yourself room to recover. If you ignore your season, you'll burn out. You'll grind through when you should be sitting down. You'll push when you should be reflecting. You'll miss the deeper work because you're trying to keep up with someone else's timing. And in doing so, you'll confuse movement with progress. But progress without alignment is not purpose. It's exhaustion. Purposeful living means you build your life with rhythm, with space, with enough awareness to say, I don't need to prove anything. I just need to be present with what this moment is asking of me. That's where you stay grounded. That's where you stay focused. That's where you stop forcing and start flowing. And honoring your season doesn't mean you wait passively. It means you participate fully. You do what this season requires of you. You tend the ground. You clear the clutter. You have the conversation. You make the shift. You protect the margin. You stay faithful in the place you're in while trusting that it's preparing you for the place you're going. You don't always get to choose the season, but you always get to choose your posture inside it. So choose wisely. Choose to show up. Choose to stay present. Choose to respect the rhythm. Because when you live like that, you stop living in resistance and start living in purpose. The eighth principle is to serve something greater than yourself. Because purpose expands when it's not just about you. When your decisions are rooted in more than personal gain. When your actions reach further than your own comfort. When your presence makes other people's lives better, not just your own, more impressive. The people who live with the deepest sense of purpose are the ones who tie their lives to impact. Not because they want credit, but because they understand that fulfillment is not found in accumulation, but in contribution. They're not driven by ego. They're anchored in service. And that service becomes the engine that keeps them going long after motivation fades. This doesn't mean you have to become a martyr. It doesn't mean you deny your needs or abandon your dreams. It means your dreams get bigger. Your goals get deeper. Your vision expands beyond just what you can achieve and begins to include who you can lift while you rise. You weren't designed to build a life of purpose in isolation. You were made to connect, to contribute, to leave places better than you found them, to bring strength into someone else's weakness, to offer peace where there's noise, to create something that will outlast your own timeline. And when you start to live like that, everything shifts. You stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what can I give? You stop trying to impress and start trying to impact. You stop measuring your value by your visibility and start measuring it by your contribution. You can feel it when someone's life is rooted in service. There's a different energy, a different gravity, a different presence. They're not loud, but they're powerful. They don't need to be noticed to know they're valuable. They live with depth, with conviction, with a sense of responsibility that goes beyond themselves. And service doesn't require a stage. It requires awareness. You serve when you listen fully, when you speak truthfully, when you lead quietly by example, when you use what you've been through to help someone else find their footing, when you show up with integrity, even when no one's watching. Purpose multiplies when you give it away, when you let your lessons become someone else's lifeline, when you offer your scars as evidence that healing is possible, when you use your time, your gifts, your presence to make someone else's path a little brighter. And the beautiful part is, this kind of service doesn't deplete you. It fills you, because it aligns with your design. You weren't built to only receive. You were built to overflow. And when you find the place where your strength meets someone else's need, you find the sweet spot of purpose. So live with open hands, with an open heart, with a willingness to be useful, not just successful. Your life doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. Your voice doesn't have to be loud to be necessary. Your story doesn't have to be complete to be helpful. Serve, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's unseen, even when it's not acknowledged, because the impact you leave in others will echo long after your task list is forgotten. And that echo, that ripple, that legacy, that's what purpose really is. A life of purpose is not something you stumble into. It's something you build on purpose, with intention, and through repetition. It's not always loud. It's not always glamorous. It's often quiet, often ordinary. But underneath the routine is meaning, and that meaning gives your life weight. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to wait until you're perfect. You just need to start living in alignment with what matters most. One decision at a time, one conversation at a time, one habit at a time. Because the life you're building doesn't come from grand declarations, it comes from daily practice. Every principle in this seminar was meant to pull you deeper, not into pressure, but into presence, not into more, but into meaning. Because your peace doesn't come from how much you do. It comes from how aligned you are when you do it. Your fulfillment doesn't come from applause. It comes from knowing that how you live matches what you believe. Purpose doesn't require a perfect plan. It requires courage to say no when you need to slow down when your soul needs space, to speak truth even when your voice shakes, to stay rooted when the world wants you to drift, to serve when no one's watching, to grow when it would be easier to settle. You won't get it right every time. You'll fall out of rhythm. You'll forget what matters. You'll drift. That's normal. That's human. But the beauty of purpose is that it's always waiting for you to come back. It never disappears. It never leaves. It just gets buried under distraction until you return. So return. Come back to your values. Come back to your vision. Come back to who you were before the pressure shaped you into someone smaller. Come back to the part of you that knows what matters. and live from there. Build from there. Love from there. You don't need to chase your purpose. It's not out there, it's in here. Already written into the way you think, the way you serve, the way you move when you're at your most honest. Your job is to listen, to align, to protect what you carry, and to live like your life matters, because it does.